about another round of applause for the film? I think Well, the house lights are still down. I can't see our special guests, but I would like to introduce them to you, and as they come up, ask them to stand up. We have a number of people who are in the film here with us tonight. Gertrude Brown. Ms. Brown is here. There she is. Tom Bolton. Queen Quet. Kenneth Singleton. And we have the Buford fixer, Richard Brooks. I'm going to turn the rest of the program over to Richard Brooks. The film would not have been possible to have been presented here tonight without his work with the film crew and without him bringing it as part of the Buford research.
So let me tell you a little bbit about Mike. Mike Todd is from Manchester, England. He's a filmmaker, journalist, and consultant with more than 10 years of experience in digital media production. He and Seth Garcia, he and Seth started the documentary film production company Riverhorse TV in 2005. You can find that at riverhorse.tv on the World Wide Web. Gisette produced the Joe Frazier documentary and also is with us today. Mike has directed a number of films that have been broadcast and screened internationally. They include Keeping It Real, a documentary about legendary British music icon Tony Wilson, and Catch, a documentary on the origins of professional wrestling. And I really want to see that, Mike. Mike has studied at the European Documentary Campus Master School for Factual Filmmakers and holds a bachelor's degree in American Studies and a master's degree in Public Relations. And I would also like to know what one studies about Americans, but it's got to be a different perspective. He also studied film at the University of California, Berkeley. He's an associate fellow of the Brooks World Poverty Institute at Manchester University. The Brooks World Poverty Institute is no relation to me. He's worked as a spokesman for the United Nations mission in Kosovo. He worked to promote Manchester for the 2002 Commonwealth Games, and he chaired the communications group for the 2003 UEFA Champions League final, which has something to do with soccer, as we call it in America. Mike and Gisette currently are working on a new project about Mexican-American identity in California. Please welcome the director of Joe Frazier, When the Smoke Clears, Mike Todd. Mike will take questions from the audience here, and I'll go ahead and ask you the first one. Tell us how the film changed from what you envisioned to begin with and the final version. You explained this afternoon, and it was interesting and fascinating.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. Yeah, well, I was explaining this afternoon that when we started out researching this film, we were really looking at it from the perspective of a boxing gym. We were looking at kind of the impact that gyms like Joe's have on the communities they're in. And it was only during the research process that, you know, everyone knows that Joe Frazier had this gym in Philadelphia, but I didn't realize it was still kind of operating, was still this kind of landmark institution. So when we decided we were going to make this film in a boxing gym, we thought, well, why not make it on what is probably the most famous boxing gym in the world, which is Joe Frazier's. And as we started to research more about the project, we were in touch with Joe and getting his and Marvis's agreement about doing the film. We sort of began to kind of look more at Joe's life and how that kind of intertwines with the meaning of the gym, and that's really how the story evolved. I mean, in so many ways, this film wasn't quite what we expected when we started out. I mean, first off, Isaiah, the young guy you see in the film, we were hoping to kind of follow his progress in the Golden Gloves. It was expected to be like a a national champion, and when we started filming with him, it was to kind of follow his journey and the positive impact that being at the gym had on his life. Then he ends up in prison, which sadly is to some extent a more accurate reflection of the situation of where Joe's neighbourhood is and the problems a lot of people face. And then also, the biggest blow, we obviously never expected that the gym was to close during the process of the film, and it was such a landmark institution, this world famous place, and obviously you see in the film that Marvis particularly was desperate to keep it open. He kind of gave his life to supporting Joe and his work there, and a lot of people wanted to see it continue. So there were some disappointments, but what we set out to do with the film once we decided it was going to be on Joe at the gym was to really try and show the human side of Joe's character. We felt that everything that we'd done on Joe or that Joe's involvement was always trapped within this frame of his rivalry with Muhammad Ali, which is clearly what makes him so famous. That rivalry with Muhammad Ali was the most famous probably rivalry in any sport, in any era. So you can't tell Joe's story without looking at that, but we wanted to show kind of Joe's experiences as a human being and where he came from, and why he was in some ways inspired to be what he became, and also how he devoted his life, which many people don't know, to the kind of the community that was his adopted home in Philadelphia. I mean, it was a fantastic experience to be able to make the film, to spend all the time we did with Joe and Marvis and everyone we met in the making of it. Everyone who we met, you see George Foreman, Larry Holmes, no one has a bad word to say about Joe. When you talk to everyone's got the utmost respect for him, and both as a kind of a boxer and as a man. So it was a great privilege to spend the time we did. I think he gave us unbelievable access, and hopefully we did his kind of story justice and shed in a small way some light on his life and his experiences both in the past and in the present. So, yeah. That was a long answer to the initial question. Kind of went into a bit of a background explanation as well. So, are there any other questions about the film?
Good evening, everyone, by the way. Are there any plans to approach any of the individuals or states of the individuals who were part of those original shareholders that invested in him in the past, to say to them to invest in that gym and the other piece of property, so that there is truly something monumental left in Philadelphia, fam?
I think there needs to be, in fact, we, in a small way, tried to broker a deal with, there's a charity in England, it's called Fight for Peace. There's a guy who runs a gym in Rio in Brazil and a gym in London, and he's kind of a well-established fundraiser who deals with projects that do the kind of work that Joe's gym does, and project gyms like this around the world have always served this kind of role. But we'd hope that the film may open some doors to try and get some recognition for the gym, because even on a purely tourist level in Philadelphia, that gym is an iconic place that people want to go, and people from all over the world just turn up there to see it. And never mind the great work it did in the community, the social value it had. It was just a place that, is so epic in terms of the scale of that era of boxing when, I think I was talking to someone earlier, there were only a handful of people with the name recognition that Joe Frazier has around the world. To have a gym that he's run for 40 years in your city, people you would think would be falling over themselves to recognise that and do everything they can to save it, but
they don't.
Sadly it just seems somehow it slipped through the cracks.
Say that 1971 was his greatest moment. But on the other hand, what we see in this film of the person is probably much greater than that. The qualities that allowed him to achieve that in 1971 are really the thing, and the warmth and the love and the dedication that has survived since then, I think, is a wonderful story, and a lot more than who you can with.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Curious about Mr. Frazier's place in history as a Sea Islander, and I'm kind of curious about what people from your part of the world, how you see the Sea Islands, what you expected before you came here, what you always, just this whole issue about identity and.
Yeah, I wrote a lot making the film. I I mean, if you read a basic history about Joe Fraser, it says like he's the son of a sharecropper. He wasn't the son of a sharecropper, as his sister's keen to point out. They own the land, and I had never heard the word Gullah before I started researching this, and I read about Joe in more detail and more depth, and so I understood a little bit more before I came out, but obviously visiting here and understanding the complexities and the history connected to the Civil War, to this place and its particular significance. And it's, I don't think many people in the UK, for example, know the importance of the Sea Islands. I'm from Manchester, which is a city that it kind of grew wealthy during the 1800s. Its era of great wealth was on the back of cotton. It was known as Cottonopolis. So the history of the city is tied to this area, really, in some ways, but people don't quite, I think, understand the culture and the significance of what went on here. Last question, if there is one, I think. Otherwise, are we done? Okay, thank you.